In the previous video, we started to use the Qt Designer tool. In this video, we will be converting the Designer UI code to Python code. We will be looking at the Designer UI code. We will be using the PyUIC5 tool. We will be converting the Designer UI code to Python code. And after that, we will start to use horizontal and vertical layout widgets. And we will regenerate the improved UI. Let us now look at the file we saved when we designed our first GUI using PyQt5 Designer. So this is the one we saved. As we mentioned, it ends with a .ui extension. And we can open it simply with a text editor. I use Node++. And when we open it up, what we see is, this is a file, the .ui file, and it's XML. So what the designer created when we saved it is simply XML. It has nothing to do with Python, that's just XML. So what we need to do is, in order to use it from Python, we have to convert the XML UI file into Python code. And PyQt5 comes with a utility. It's called PyUIC5, and it has several options. And the first option we're going to be using is -o for output. PyUIC5 conversion utility expects an output, and we have to tell it the output name, and the output will be Py file or Python file. So the first part is Py, and we have to give it an input file, and that's the UI part. So Py here, UI there, and C I think stands for convert, and the version is 5. So convert a UI file to a Python file, and then when we run it, we'll get an output file. And if we don't get any errors, it means it was successful. So when I refresh the folder here, we can see that now we got the Py file, which we didn't have before. So let's look at that one in Notepad. So when we open up the converted.py file, this is what we get. We can see there's a class with a setup method that expects a main window, and it imports the 3 main core modules or packages from PyQt5, and that's it. So one important thing to notice is warning: all changes made in this file will be lost. So this is auto-generated via the utility, so we don't really want to make any changes in here. And this by itself doesn't do much yet, so we can specify another option for the PyUIC5 utility. So let's do that next. So in addition to specifying the -o option for the PyUIC5 utility, we can specify -x, which makes it the output executable. So we want the same as before, -o, but we also want it executable. And again, we're going to override this guy here. So we want the output to be this and the input to be that. Okay, so we're going to overwrite this guy. And this time, the only difference will be the -x option. So again, no error here. So when we do ls, we can see it just got updated, the timestamp. So now we have the same video2 first design.py file, only with the -x option specified. So when we open up Notepad, I still have the file in there. It has been modified. You want to reload it, and I'm saying yes. And the only difference now is this bottom section here. So the if name equals main, the typical Python self-test section has been added. So this code here, and that's what we were interested in. That's why I didn't run the -x option right away. That we're going to be using this in our own Python module. So this is the only difference. That makes it executable, which means we can run the Python file by itself now. So we can double click the Py file, and after that we'll import it also into Eclipse and run it from there. So as we can see, here's our Qt Designer generated GUI, and we converted the UI XML code into Python code and made it executable, and it's the same GUI as we designed. So, but this is now running Python. So this is the same file in Eclipse. My development IDE can run it from here. And from now on, what we'll be doing is we'll be going back and forth between the Qt Designer, making changes in the UI, then converting it, and then running it from Eclipse and importing it into our own Python module. So from now on, it's going to be back and forth between UI design and Python added functionality. So back in the designer, in the Qt Designer, I've saved the previous form as video3, so I don't accidentally override it, but that it's the same design. And the first thing we want to do is add some layouts. So PyQt5 comes with a lot of layouts. So the way it works is we can simply highlight a widget from the left-hand side and drag it onto the form. There it is. And then in the object inspector, we can see we have just added a horizontal layout. So the object name is horizontal layout by default, and the class is QHBox layout. So that's this guy here, and we can make it fill in the entire form. Let's just save it. And next we can add some push buttons. And there are lots of widgets here on the left hand side, and if you don't find where it is, that's for buttons. So we can drag a push button here, and because we used horizontal layout, when we drag a second push button on top of the first one, it spaces itself. So now both of them are occupying half of the size of our window, and they're the same size. So we don't have to drag it or specify the size here. We started with a horizontal layout. We dragged one push button onto it, and then we added another here, this guy. So we dragged one push button into the horizontal layout, then we dragged the second one onto it, and it automatically aligned it. That's the layout part. So it already aligned it for us, and when we run it, Control and R, this is our UI. The buttons are functional, the status bar, text is still there, file new is there. So it's that easy. So now we have two buttons in a layout in our GUI. But actually, that's not quite what I wanted to do. I wanted to have the layout be a little bit smaller for now. So let's resize it. I wanted to show you something else first. So we have our horizontal layout with the buttons in here. Now we want to place a label on top of it. So let's find a label among the widgets we have available here. And again, might be easier to type it into the filter. But anyway, the label is here, so we can drag it on here. So we have a label here. And now what we can do, we can have the horizontal layout here and no layout there. We can right click on the form, go to layout and select layout vertically. And this now created a vertical layout in addition to the existing one. And what that does is it spaced our label on top vertically above the horizontal layout. And we can see that here as well. So we got the horizontal layout and the label up there. So when we preview it, we can see we have the label here and the push buttons down there. And the next thing we want to do is we want our label to be in the center aligned. So we can highlight it in the object inspector on here. So with it highlighted, we can go to a property and alignment here for the Q label. Right now horizontally by default it's aligned left here, but we want it in the center, so we can change it via the drop down, align horizontal center. We can see it now, it's aligned in the center. So we didn't have to specify like pixels or this or that. We just use those layout managers that are available to us from PyQt5. And when we run it now, we can see our text label is in the middle and our buttons are at the bottom. They are functional. They don't do anything yet, but you can click them. And the next step now is to regenerate our new GUI design using PyUIC5. So the next step. So back in the Windows PowerShell, we now see a new UI file we just created. So we converted PyUIC5-X-O, and the input file is our UI file. I mean, the output file is going to be the Py file and the input file is UI file, and we run it and no errors. So now we have a video3 first design.py file as well. So when we now run our Python file, we have our new UI in Python and has some push buttons, the label in the middle, centered, and the rest is the same. So this is how it works. You start with a design, UI design, convert it, run it, make some changes, go back and forth between the design, and in a little bit we will import the generated UI and add functionality purely from Python. In this video we converted the designer UI code to Python code, and first we looked at the UI code and found out it's XML. We then used the PyUIC5 tool to convert the UI code to Python code, to .py code, and then after making sure that works, we made changes, we improved the UI using the designer and converted it again to Python. And in the next video, we will be modularizing the UI code.